In June, snow fell in the hills of New York, Vermont, and Maine. July brought heavy frosts and ice storms. Peach and apple blossoms froze. Corn and wheat withered in the ground. In July, fishermen saw lake and river ice as far south as northern Pennsylvania. Grain prices quadrupled, bringing famine to Europe and China. In New England, after we ate all the cows and horses we could spare, we began to eat mackerel. At that time, with the possible exception of those who firmly believed in the will of God, no one could explain it. 150 years later, by 1956, with a better understanding of the jet stream and weather patterns, the scientific community had come to an agreement. I was 13 when my father explained it to me. A volcano, Mount Tambora, in faraway Indonesia, had exploded, sending tons of volcanic ash, 148,000 feet into the atmosphere. This
What?
created a stratospheric veil of dust, which deflected the rays of the sun. It wasn't until 1970, when I first paid attention to the fears of global warming, that I remembered this story. As an optimist, even back in 1970, I felt that a people who could put men on the moon simply for the sport of it and build bombs that threatened to destroy our world, those people can certainly engineer a scheme to protect us safely from global warming. All it will take is the will, and there lies the challenge.
There's been no rain for 90 days. Dare you keep a score? You know we'll face the burning rays another 60 more. The wind comes up in the afternoon. Hear it through the trees, like pipes that play an ancient tune of travelers on the sea. The nations turn to darkened dreams. The sunlight turns to haze. The ground is tearing up the seams. They're numbering the days. Like Pegasus come sweeping down, carrying me away. High above the roaring sand, Santa Ana come today. Across the paths and rolling hills, through waving grass, it comes to blow me away. Blow me away. Blow me away. Emperors and prairie fires, the golden legacy. Memories of man's desires go rolling out to sea. Like Pegasus come sweeping down, carrying me away. High above the roaring sand, Santa Ana come today. Across the paths and rolling hills, through raving grass, it comes to blow me away. Blow me away. Blow me away. Across the paths and rolling hills, through waving grass, it comes to blow me away. Blow me away. Blow me away. Thank you.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. My name is Mark Potter. I'll be our worship associate for this service. As Unitarian Universalists, we come together in worship each week to honor what is of worth. In this hour, we pause the everyday rush and flow of our lives in reverence and thanksgiving to connect with what is sacred, to remember our commitments to each other and to the world. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome to bring your full self here. Our speaker and worship leader today is John Andrews. John is one of our MIT scientists, a teacher, a writer, a good friend of us all, and an active member of the Citizens Climate Lobby. You'll also recognize our musician, Caroline Doctorow. Caroline is the mother of two girls, recording artist, songwriter, radio host of WPKN. And if you think you recognize her last name, you do. She's also E.L. Doctorow's daughter. Our tech host is Carl Wittenberg with Monica Zazada on the camera. And now would be a good time for us to turn the sounds off on our phones. You'll find printed announcements in your order of service or the link in your chat. And please get announcements that you would like sent to the congregation to our administrator by Tuesday of the week you would like them announced. And as this is the first Sunday of the month, Martha Potter will make our monthly report from the board.
Good morning. How is everybody today on this crazy Labor Day weekend? You know, I try to make an announcement every month so we know what the board is doing. And this month, I want to explain how our money is generously used. We're a very generous congregation, and we have three ways we give money out. The first is the Helping Hand Fund, which was established in 1990 to distribute grants to local organizations in need. Money is collected each Sunday in the back of the room, and the grants are usually between $500 and $1,000. We wait till we reach $1,000 before we give out a grant. Recipients include SOFO, Marines Haven, Project Most. The Helping Hand Fund Committee met this week and are giving $1,000 to the Sag Harbor Food Pantry. We feel that food insecurity is a real need in our community, which is interesting because we look around and we think we're all so wealthy, but we're not. The congregation also gave $200,000 from the Paul Berman Fund to help grassroots organizations on the East End. Organizations submit applications to the Program Assessment Committee, and I see Cecilia is here today from that committee. The committee sets parameters for grants and reviews applications. This year, 7 organizations have received grants, and you can see who received them in our weekly bulletin for the descriptions of them, and it's also put on our bulletin board. The last way we give out money was decided by the board about a year ago. And it's called Share the Plate. And I understand many people don't understand what we're doing with that. Well, Share the Plate focuses on groups beyond our community that are in need. In the past, we have given to the First Parish Church of Kingston, Massachusetts, who was vandalized and there was fire destroying many of their things. We've given to the Roots of Peace, an organization working to promote understanding between Jews and Palestinians in the West Bank. We ask the congregation to share the plate when I give the announcement on the first Sunday of every month. So today, and I wish there were many more of you here to put money in the basket, but the money in the basket will be shared with the International Fund for Animal Welfare. That it has to do with climate change, that they partner with local rescue groups to save indigenous wildlife from the fires that are happening in Canada and in the West. That's the International Fund for Animal Welfare. Other things the board are doing. We have something called committee liaisons. The board is very interested in the activities of our congregation. So each committee in our congregation has been assigned a board member, and I will send out a list to everybody. And please let us know what your group is doing so the board can take action if it needs to. Our goal this year are finding ways to get the word out to the greater East End community about what we believe and who we are. If you look around this room, there's not many of us here today, and we really want the East End community to know. So I'm looking actually for volunteers, and the board will work on this too, to put more advertisements in our local papers, to talk to people, to let them know how wonderful we are. And you'll notice on the back of your order of service, and you're welcome to distribute this, there are 2 courses going on what Unitarian Universalism is. I asked Kelly to put this in our order of service, and please take extras and give them to people. So people really, if they want to come and find out what Unitarian Universalism is, they might stop by on these days, see our service, and join the course after our service. Okay. We also want Sundays to be more welcoming. I started greeting again today. I miss the greeters. I miss people coming in and saying, it's really nice to see you. You know, it's Sunday morning and you're very welcome here. So we're also looking for people, and I know our resources are very small, but we're looking for people just to stand out there for 15 minutes and give hugs, and tell people that you're really happy they're here. So if anybody is interested in that, I'm glad to do it, but I think people get tired of just hearing me up here and then seeing me out there. So please let me know. And all you have to do is get here 10:15, 10:10. Stand at the little round table and say, here's your order of service. Do you have a name tag? And welcome to our congregation. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Martha. Do we have any visitors today who would like to introduce themselves? Not sure. I think I recognize all these faces. If you're online, please sign our virtual guest book using the link in the chat. Oh, we have a visitor, Sienna. Great. Nice to have you. Okay. And please take a moment now to greet your neighbor in person or in chat.
I'm gonna sit with everybody until the offering and then I'll come back and play. I'm going to sit with everybody there. I'm scared.
And now we have a candle lighter, Buzzy, who will light our candles. And while she does, who will light the chalice. And while she does, let's consider the flame. It may have been the first tool our ancestors learned to use to drive off the cold, to fight, to light our way, to heat our food, to build weapons, and carry us across oceans and streams and continents. A symbol of technology, of progress, and from ancient times, a symbol of sacred space, the space where we now worship. Let it guide us to a future free of want, war, and climate disaster. Please rise as you are able to join together in singing hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Okay, Carl's going to play it once through, and then we'll start. Beauty of freedom, the splendor of the skies, the bridge from the skies, starting from great of grace.
Well, I'm not old enough to remember World War II. And sometimes when I muse upon history, I realize that World War II is as far in the past now as the Civil War was when World War II was going on. And I was a baby, so I can't remember. But I've often been impressed by the story of how Winston Churchill roused the British people to fight the Nazis in 1940. There's a film called Darkest Hour that is very worthwhile seeing if you didn't see it when it first came out. But anyway, his great speech to the House of Commons in 1940, this was after the fall of France, and Dunkirk had not yet happened, but it was on the way. And Winston Churchill says, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." And even with, if I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. The main characters in this drama were Winston Churchill in the center, who had just taken on the role of being prime minister and had taken over from Neville Chamberlain, the guy on the right. And then there was Lord Halifax, the guy on the left, who might have been chosen to be prime minister, but backed off. And these three fellows epitomized to me three reactions to climate change today. Neville Chamberlain was blasé. Hitler's not a nice guy, but we got it. Not a big problem. We'll have peace in our time, as he said when he came back from Munich. And he's like the people who deny climate change or minimize it and saying, it's real, but it's not a real problem. And then after France had fallen, Lord Halifax had the other reaction, that's no good, was, well, we're defeated. There's nothing we can do. We'd better just live with it and take whatever Hitler's willing to give us, which is not going to be a whole lot. And Churchill said, no, we will fight on, and we will be able to win. So little unsettling information. Only 25% of conservatives view climate change as a major threat. So think Chamberlain. 56% of young people in a survey of 100,000 young people aged 16 to 25 said that 56% of the people in that survey told BBC that humanity is doomed. And think Halifax. And I find that even more disturbing, that if it's at all representative of how young people view climate change, that we're doomed and there's nothing that can be done. So let's just party now and we'll die later. We need the Churchill approach. Climate change is a huge threat, and we can prevail. So this is a little diagram I made up that shows 4 reactions to a problem. And it's not just climate change, it's anything that you might be running into. So there's denialism, meaning it's not a problem. There's defeatism, which says the big problem, but we're defeated. And then there are 2 other attitudes. One is passive hope, meaning, well, I'll keep my fingers crossed, knock on wood, and it's still uncertain as to what's going to happen, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I'll just sit there and knock on wood. And related to that is fatalism or stoicism, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The idea is to saying, well, it's all in the cards, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I'll just do my best to get my mind around accepting whatever happens, but I can't do anything about it. And of course, the one in the middle is the one that I think is the way to go, certainly with climate change and with a whole lot of other problems that we face in our lives. Urgent optimism. The optimism is not blind optimism, meaning, oh, it'll all be fine. And the urgent means we can do something. So yes, it's a problem and we can do something about it. And I borrowed the term urgent optimism. This is a wonderful book. It's called Not the End of the World by a woman named Hannah Ritchie, who is deputy editor and lead researcher of Our World in Data. And this is a very worthwhile read. So that's first message.
We support the work of this congregation through the gifts of our time, our talents, and our treasure. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work, including worship, religious exploration, community care, and connection. And your generosity is reflected in the ways that we are able to show up in our community for justice and service. To contribute, you can use the baskets that will circulate shortly. You can also use the link in your chat online. In the back of the room, you can contribute to the Helping Hands Fund, which today we share with the rescuing. Okay, that's the show. Oh, that's right. We split that. All right, got it. The Helping Hands Fund provides support to local organizations and to our minister's discretionary fund, which provides support to individuals in immediate need.
I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside and study war no more. I ain't gonna 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 study war no more.
Our responsive reading today is number 567, to be of use. I'll read the Roman type and ask you to respond in the italics. And I chose this because it embodies what I think we're talking about with urgent optimism. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who stand in the line and haul in their places, the work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that hold corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. So now for a time of meditation. And I would simply ask you to think of a time in your own life when you faced a problem and had to choose whether you could do anything about it, and if so, what, and see whether these 5 possible approaches to a problem were relevant to your life, and which one did you choose, and what was the outcome?
Now is the time in our service when we share our personal joys and concerns. If you are here in the meeting house, please come up to the microphone. If you're joining us online, raise your hand or indicate in the chat, and our host will unmute you and spotlight your video. Someone will follow up with you. So now let's rise to sing hymn number 134, Our World is One World. Carl will play it through once for us.
Well, I've titled this a Churchillian climate plan in honor of one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, because, as I've said, he recognized two things. One, Britain was in deep, deep, deep trouble. And yet he persisted in the thought that, yes, we can still pull this one out. And those two things need to be brought together when it comes to climate change. So that's why I call this a Churchillian climate plan. Now, I have to start off by admitting that anybody who wants to project even the slightest bit of optimism has to confront a couple of inconvenient facts. As you may have seen these slides before, and if I ever give another talk, you're going to see them again, because they summarize what our situation is, what our conundrum is. This first one shows carbon dioxide emissions, which is the major greenhouse gas, not the only one, but the major one, of the United States and the rest of the world from 1970 until now. And there's a couple of shocking things. One shocking thing is that America's carbon emissions are about the same as they were in 1979. How could that possibly be? Our population has grown, our economy is 3 times as big as it was then, even after taking inflation into account. And it's because we're twice as efficient in our use of energy as we were, and we have started to bring in carbon-free sources of energy, nuclear, wind, and solar. And we're using less coal because fracking was invented. So there's a whole bunch of things that have militated in that direction. But the rest of the world, carbon emissions have gone up and up and up. And so we have to face the fact that we can't solve the problem alone. It's a worldwide problem. And so we just have to take that in and absorb it. The next. But before Americans pat themselves on the back too much and wrench their shoulders out of joint, saying our emissions are no greater than they were in 1979, on a per-person basis, we're still way ahead of the rest of the world. We still emit a lot more carbon dioxide per person than the rest of the world. Maybe not as much per person as in 1979, but still a lot more, 3 times as much as the rest of the world. So the lesson from that is that America must lead. If America doesn't lead, how can you expect the rest of the world to do anything? So America can't solve the problem by itself. We can't solve the problem just by consuming less, although that's always a good idea. But that by itself is not going to solve the problem because the rest of the world wants to live the way we do. And who can blame them? And so these two facts, which might make you think, well, then we're all totally defeated. But I want to argue that, no, we shouldn't take the attitude that we're totally defeated. So, as I said, that's why I call this a Churchillian climate plan. And I always like something that helps you remember what's in it, because there's a lot of different things, and you can walk away and say, well, what the heck was he talking about? There are 4 pieces to this, and I use the acronym RAIN. The R in RAIN is for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that's a necessary condition. There was a time when it might have been a sufficient condition, but we have, I mean the whole world, we've let that opportunity go by for a whole flock of reasons that I won't get into right now, but we can talk about it afterward. So yes, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is the first part, but that by itself is not enough. Second piece is we have to adapt. Even if we reduced emissions to zero right now, climate change would still continue. And we're going to have to take adaptive measures both in this country, and we need to help other countries adapt as well, because we're one of the major causes of the problem. The third piece is inventing new climate-saving technologies. Now here's where I part company with a lot of environmentalists who hate technology. Technology caused all our problems. Last thing we need is more technology. And I say, no, we don't need more technology. We need better technology. And finally, negotiation between the parties in this country and between America and the rest of the world. So let me just explain a little bit about what some of these things are. Technical options, meaning how can it be done? Carbon-free energy, wind, solar, and nuclear. We need all the carbon-free energy we can get. The time when we should say, oh, well, that's not perfect, so don't do that. That isn't perfect, so don't do that. That applies to nuclear, but it applies to wind and solar as well. None of these is perfect. If you wait for something perfect, we'll all be gone, long gone, because nothing's ever perfect. Deploying the best available technology. We've done a fair job of doing that already. As I said, our economy is twice as energy efficient as it was in 1979, but still, there's an awful lot more that can be done. You've heard a lot about electrification. Why electrification? Well, if we're successful in moving our electric grid into sources that don't give off carbon dioxide, then it makes sense to stop using fossil fuels directly in our cars and in our homes and to go to electric vehicles, electric heat pumps, and so forth. So this is part and parcel of the strategy to boost carbon-free energy and remove fossil fuels as much as we can. And the fourth one, agriculture and food. The whole food production chain and how we distribute food, what food we eat, and so forth, is a huge factor in climate. And particularly in the non-CO2 gases, livestock emit methane by burping it out, fertilizers emit nitrous oxide, and we need to figure out ways to reduce those, but there are things that can be done even today. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is not what can be done, but how to get it done. And there's a whole flock of ways to do that. The one that I think is the best and most effective, and it's not just me, nearly all economists in the world, whether they're liberal or conservative, agree that carbon pricing is the most effective way. And in particular, carbon fee and dividend just means you charge a fee to the producers and importers of fossil fuels proportional to how much carbon is going to be emitted when they're burned. You take all that money and you give it back to the American people in equal shares. And by doing that, yes, energy prices will rise, but the dividends will keep most of us whole, unless you're terribly profligate, or if you have 6 yachts and 4 houses and 4 continents, you're going to pay more, but you should. Obviously, this has been a hard sell politically, but still, it needs to be emphasized that it's the best. But there are other options: incentives, tax credits, subsidies, fast-tracking permits. The Inflation Reduction Act that was passed a couple of years ago was basically a basket of incentives. The Biden administration realized that this wasn't going to happen at the time, so they managed to get this through, which was a good second choice. Now, regulations are another option, and even conservatives will, if they're honest, admit that regulations have a place, because sometimes the person who makes the decision on what to build isn't the person who pays the bills. For example, rental housing or spec housing. A builder will have every incentive to put in the least efficient, cheapest heating and cooling equipment, the least amount of insulation and so forth, drop the price of the house and use that money to build jacuzzis and fancy things that get buyers. And so we need regulations on energy efficiency. And the fact that the regulations that we have has been a big part of our improved energy efficiency over the last several decades. Then there's information. Agriculture is a big part of the solution, and I'm a great believer in extending the agricultural extension program into ways to both reduce agricultural emissions and help farmers adapt to the changes that are definitely going to come. And there is a factor, something in the Farm Bill that is a start at that, and I'm glad of that. The sleeper here, empower women worldwide. Educate girls, enable women smallholders, support family planning. This is a sleeper, and the Drawdown organization that some of you have heard about, in their book, they made a big deal about this, and it raised my consciousness as to how much good that would do. To summarize it, basically, the more women are empowered, the better it'll be for the climate. Adaptation. I call it the things that are happening, the 5 W's. Warming, that's the obvious one, global warming. Heat waves that kill people directly, and ecosystem disruption that threaten the species on which we depend for life. Water, rising sea levels. Wind, storms increasing in intensity, even if not in frequency. Wildfires, we all know about hotter, drier areas being vulnerable to wildfires. And then the last W is weirding, because actually climate change makes some areas get a whole lot more rain than they used to, like Florida, and other areas like California and the Southwest getting less than they used to, and in both cases, it's not a good thing. So why adaptation? Well, if you think adaptation is the only thing we need to do, well then no, but it has to be part of the package. Reducing the impacts of climate change that are already locked in, but there's a political reason. Most of what we do on climate change, if we ever get our act together and really do what's needed, will have benefits that won't be apparent for a while. We need something that will have immediate benefits so that it will give American voters a reason to support it. And we also need to assist tropical nations to adapt and get them on board when the great negotiation finally occurs. Then we get to invent. Why invent? Simple fact, current technology isn't enough. We're going to need some breakthroughs if our optimism is going to be justified. Remember, Churchill had no guarantees. He was an optimist in spite of the fact that there's uncertainty. So we need better technology. The benefits of research will far outstrip the cost. Spend billions to save trillions. A selfish region is that if America develops the better technologies, we'll be able to sell it to others rather than having to buy it from others. I'm not against buying it where that makes sense, but we ought to be able to sell as well as buy. And finally, moral sense. Research is the only way we can begin to repay future generations for our profligacy. What are possibilities for new technologies? Now here we start to get into things that are controversial. First of all, better ways of reducing emissions, lower cost carbon-free energy, in improved energy efficiency and advances in agriculture and food technology. Not terribly controversial. Adaptive measures, basically making it less expensive to do the things we need to do to adapt. Maybe a little more controversial. Carbon capture and storage means taking carbon out of fossil fuels either before they're burned or right after they're burned, but also the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is now saying that in order to solve our problems, we need to figure out how to take carbon directly from the atmosphere and the oceans. That's a huge, huge problem. And research is going on, but we need to bump up that research by a couple of orders of magnitude. And finally, the most controversial is geoengineering, meaning messing with the ecosystem of the planet, either by, for example, by altering the amount of sunlight that hits the Earth. Now, Mark talked about that volcano, and it is true that when volcanoes erupt, there's a momentary cooling effect. And some people are suggesting that when push comes to shove, we're going to need to do things like that or other things that are being looked at to get us over the hump, just as by 1940, when Churchill gave his speech, it was too late for negotiation. We needed to build military hardware very fast. And I personally think that we're certainly going to need that. We should do the research on this to know which proposals, although risky, have potential benefits exceeding the risk. And there may be others that are so risky that we ought not to touch it with a barge pole in any event. But we need to know the answers now. We don't want to wait with the research until it's too late, because research takes time. And finally, nuclear fusion is something that's always been out there. It's probably far in the future, and if it ever came to fruition, it could aid all of the above things, but don't bet the planet on it, because it might never happen. So why negotiate? Well, at home in the US, politics is the art of the possible. Compromise is always necessary, even under the best of circumstances. The amazing thing about the Inflation Reduction Act was that it came through as a compromise between the Republicans and the Democrats. And who would ever think that there'd ever be any compromise? But somehow people were able to forge a compromise and pass it. But at the same time, we should build political will for more highly effective action. The point where the compromise exists, we need to move that in the direction of more effective action. And that will only happen if voters increase the importance of climate change in how they vote. And right now, unfortunately, it is not on the radar screen, as opposed to things like the economy, immigration, and abortion. Climate change is down somewhere below those things. So we need to build political will. And finally, this is really a key thing. You look at that chart that said the rest of the world's emissions, that's a huge portion of that is China. And you can say, well, we're doomed because China's never going to do anything. Well, I'd like to suggest that once America gets its house in order, if we get our house in order and we assist most of the tropical nations in adaptation, worldwide diplomatic pressure on China to cooperate will be intense. And the whole plan, I think, rises or falls on whether this would actually happen. I believe it would, but again, no guarantees. Thing about Churchill's plan is it had many backups. If this didn't work, then we'll do that. If this didn't work, then we'll do that. We'll fight on the beaches. Well, if that didn't work, we'll fight in the streets. If that didn't work, we'll fight in the hills. And if that didn't work, then we'll rely on the fleet and the empire. And if that didn't work, we'll appeal to the United States. But again, maybe none of these would have worked. There's no guarantees. So urgent optimism isn't the same thing as a Pollyanna thing, it's going to be all right. What it means is that there's reason to do something. We can have agency. As individuals, each of us is not going to save the world by ourselves, but if we move in the direction of feeling it's important and it's going to affect voting behavior and get other people to say it's going to affect their voting behavior, then you may start to see things move. So the climate change plan has to be similarly layered. Reduce emissions and adapt, that's the first priority. Removing carbon from the atmosphere and the oceans, we need to research that because it's probably going to be needed. Re-engineering ecosystems, hope we don't need a whole lot of that, but we need to do the research so that we know what will work and what won't and what the dangers are. So if a couple of decades from now it turns out that, yeah, we need that, then we'll at least have the knowledge to do the least dangerous things and the most effective things. Any talk usually ends with, well, what can you do? Here's number one. If you're a conservative or if you are friends with any conservatives, get them to accept the reality of climate change and advocate carbon fee and dividend. Carbon fee and dividend is a market forces based. It doesn't depend on regulation. There's no logical reason why conservatives shouldn't be for it if they are sincere in their conservative principles. Liberals should like it too because the dividend part keeps the least advantaged of us whole. Liberals have had the problem with environmental perfectionism, meaning there's a certain feeling that if any new technology comes along, if there's any negative environmental impact whatsoever, then you must oppose it. And, oh, wind power, it kills birds. Well, I'm sure there are some birds that get killed. It's a fact that the large wind turbines kill fewer birds than the small ones for the same amount of energy produced. But still, there are negatives to everything. Solar panels produce, what the manufacturer of solar panels produces heavy metals that if just dumped into the environment would be very toxic. They have to be dealt with. Nuclear has similar type issues, but there are also issues that can be dealt with and are being dealt with. But the point is, none of them is perfect. So environmental perfectionism is the main sin on the liberal side, and climate denialism is the main sin on the conservative side. And the fossil fuel industries have promoted both of those, and we all know what happened. This is key. I was terribly disturbed by this survey that showed how pessimistic young people tend to be. And if you're a young person, we got a couple of young people in the audience here, but I'm sure you all have children and grandchildren, and the answer is, take heart, we're not doomed, but it's going to take a whole lot of things which I just went through. And finally, everyone get politically active. Politically active can mean partisan politics. It can also mean trying to promote issues. And so that is key for everyone. And you pick your choice. I like the Citizens Climate Lobby, but there are other people who might pick some other organization. Just don't pick an organization that is rife with environmental perfectionism. I'm personally really upset with the Sierra Club because they're in that category as far as I'm concerned. I used to be a member and I quit when they opposed carbon fee and dividend in Washington State for reasons that I considered fairly specious. But anyway, that's my opinion. And but there are plenty of organizations out there that you can volunteer with, give money to, and there are candidates who are better or worse for the environment, and we can work to get the better ones elected. So there's plenty to be done. So that's it. When we had coffee, yeah. Sorry?
So now Carl's going to play through hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath, and we'll sing it together. Please rise as you're able.
And I'll just say, this is in honor of Winston Churchill, who no doubt would have said, just as long as we have breath, we will never surrender.
Go your ways, knowing the answers to knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know now. And now, do you want to blow the candles out, Fuzzy? Let's join in extinguishing the flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, those we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now we'll hear our closing song. Caroline.
Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rains come tumbling down. Pulling weeds, picking stones, we are made of dreams and bones. Need a spot to call my own, 'cause the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain. Tune my body and my brain to the music of the land. Plant your rows straight and long, temper them with prayer and song. Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her loving care. Old crow watching from a tree, he's got his eye on me, but in my garden I'm as free as that feathered thief up there. Sing it with me. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Keep them safe below till the rains come tumbling down.